Good afternoon and welcome to the pre-agenda interview for Tuesday, February 10th, 2026 for the City Solicitor. Would the clerk please read? Oh, sorry. Good afternoon and welcome to the pre-agenda interview for Tuesday, February 10th, 2026 for the City Solicitor. Would the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 21, Resolution appointing Lisa Zeidner Marcus as City Solicitor.
And for the record, we are currently joined by Councilwoman Strasburger as well as Councilman Wilson. Others may be joining us shortly. We will first begin with the oath that has to be given to all directors. Do you, Solicitor Marcus, solemnly affirm that the testimony you are about to give before this council shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And do you further affirm that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the solicitor's office to which you have been nominated?
I do.
Thank you. With that, I believe you have an intro that you want to provide to members before we go into questions.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Honorable members of City Council, good afternoon. I'm very grateful to be here with you all today. I come to you after serving 18 years as a trial lawyer for the United States Department of Justice's Civil Division. When I moved to Pittsburgh with my family 14 years ago, I switched to working remotely for DOJ, and I loved my job. I worked on cutting-edge legal issues, represented countless federal agencies in court, learned a great deal about the inner workings of the federal government, and refined my legal research, analysis, and writing skills. I wouldn't trade that experience. But my home, my family, and the community that I'm most excited to serve are here in Pittsburgh. To come downtown and get to work on behalf of this community as City Solicitor is an incredible honor. It's also a challenge that I'm ready to meet. So I want to thank you for this opportunity and for your consideration. I'll tell you a bit more about my background. I was born in Danville, a tiny town in central Pennsylvania. My mom's family was from Pittsburgh, and some of my fondest memories from growing up happened here. When I was 11 years old, my family moved to a slightly bigger small town in upstate New York. From there, I went to college at Duke University, where I served as student body president. The Duke men's basketball team is in town to play pitch tonight. I'll wait until we're off the record to tell you who I'm cheering for. After college, I worked for a couple years on Capitol Hill and then attended Columbia Law School. After that, I worked as a law clerk for the Honorable Richard J. Cardamone of the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, and then for the Honorable Richard Conway Casey of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York. In 2007, I was accepted to the U.S. Department of Justice's Honors Program, and I joined the Civil Division in the Federal Programs Branch. I represented federal agencies and officials. I worked on high-profile litigation involving constitutional claims, Administrative Procedure Act claims, and other challenges to statutes, policies, and agency decisions. As I mentioned, I spent 18 years there. Just a few weeks ago, I began my work as acting city solicitor. I want to briefly share with you my vision for the law department. Pittsburgh deserves the best. That means providing excellent legal analysis and generating creative ideas to accomplish the city's objectives within that legal framework. That means using the tools available to us to pursue the city's interests through affirmative litigation. And that means elevating the work that we do and the manner in which we do it to the next level so that other cities look to Pittsburgh as a model for how a law department is supposed to operate. These goals are absolutely attainable. I've spent a lot of time recently getting to know the attorneys and staff in the department, and I have been deeply impressed by their knowledge and dedication. I also see enormous potential for more. It starts with a relentless commitment to the law and to our client, the city of Pittsburgh. From that foundation, we must pursue innovative legal strategies, embrace new technology, and push to fulfill this department's potential. Pittsburgh deserves nothing less. Thank you again for the chance to speak with you today. I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. And we'll just start at the top and work our way down. Councilman Strasburger.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And thank you, Acting Solicitor Marcus, for your opening remarks and for your willingness to serve in this position. And, judging by the first few meetings that we've had together and your resume and your presentation, we're certainly fortunate to have you in this role and seeking this role. And I agree that we have talent and institutional memory and history in the law department that's really valuable. So I guess starting there, we always have room for, I know that every department always seeks more resources, more staff, more talent, more ability to, attract more talent. And I know that's also true in the law department. And unfortunately, we're in a very lean year this year, and so we're going to probably need to approach that kind of building back in future years. But that said, in the time that you spent in the law department so far, what do you see are the biggest opportunities for, if we could, for bolstering the department internally to be able to avoid some of the really costly outside counsel contracts that we have? Are there certain issue areas, or if you don't even have that at the ready in the moment, a simple sort of yes or no answer could be helpful. But are you seeing those kinds of opportunities already that are already apparent within the law department?
I am still in the process of analyzing, where we're going to, if we're going to bring more people in and where those people will serve. I see opportunities to grow the department within the budget that we have. I'm working on, for example, this summer having some modifications for our summer law clerk program to make it more attractive and to use it as a tool to recruit. As to your question about avoiding outside counsel fees, I think that I will be looking at ways that we can improve our processes within the law department to make sure that the staff are talking to each other, that it's not completely siloed, and that we use the expertise that we have in-house. So if there's some new litigation, I want our litigators to be talking to our municipal lawyers about the background of that litigation, and within their area within the areas that the municipal lawyers work on. And the flip is true also. I want our municipal lawyers to be engaging more with our litigators, because they are the ones who are often advising on the first line advice being provided to city agencies and to council, and it should be informed by litigation risk. So there are some ways to improve the processes to achieve better outcomes with our litigation without needing to fully rely on outside counsel.
Great. As counsel, we have a certain number of staff per office and some talented staff who work for the hallway at large, and yet none of us is a board, a bar certified attorney. So when it comes to drafting legislation, writing legislation, or getting a formal legal opinion, we rely heavily on the law department. Have you figured out quite what your approach will be for working with 9 different council offices as we seek to, ideally come to you before legislation is drafted or in the process of drafting legislation, to be able to, in addition to the voluminous work that you already have in the law department, to be able to meet the needs of each of the council offices for either a quick turnaround opinion on something that is before us and that is presently at council, sort of like, defense, but also on offense, and sort of tackling the drafting of legislation, of how you'll approach that, and I guess on ensuring that, well, I guess there's the second part of that is acknowledging that sometimes council members introduce legislation that push the boundaries, right? And so there's a balance there of fulfilling the desires of what each council member is seeking to achieve with each ordinance or resolution or will of council, and the balance between the risk, of what the council office or the council at large wishes to do and the risk to the city.
Yes. I hope that the law department will be council's first stop in legal analysis, and that you'll ask for our advice early and often. I think it's important to provide you all are the policy decision makers. We know the law. I want to make sure that we are providing the framework for your for your policy decisions. So making sure that you know what the state statutes might say, what courts have opined on similar issues, and the scope and bounds of the authority that council has available to it for a given issue. We will make sure that council has that we give excellent customer service to council, and continue to do that. Jesse Exelis, who is the deputy city solicitor and a longtime staff member of the law department, I would encourage everybody in council, when you're seeking a legal opinion, to use him as your primary contact, but also to CC me. For bigger, more important projects that you are working on, if we have, I understand that you need to have quick turnaround on some questions, but if you have priority projects that require, more careful thought, I would encourage you to reach out to us earlier in the process, so that we can provide the legal research and advice that would support your decisions.
As the chair of the Finance and Law Committee, I think the finance part of the chair or the committee gets outsized attention, especially around budget season. But is there anything that I can do to facilitate a better open door policy or relationship with council, or anything you need from us at the moment?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Keep us posted. I think those are all my questions for now, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.
Councilman Wilson?
Thank you, Chair. So we had a great meeting the other day. I think it was yesterday, right? Yeah. Everything blends together for me sometimes. So it was a good meeting with you yesterday, and I got a lot of my questions answered there, but I thought of a few others. But let me just say, it was helpful to understand the way you view certain litigation that we have already in the courts. Particular one, there's definitely one that I'm very interested in seeing pass. And maybe if you can just give another overview, something we already went over, but for the public, how you would approach cases that are already in litigation.
When we get cases,
because basically, sorry to interrupt, but basically because it was a lot of the efforts. Some of them were efforts from council, but some of them were efforts from the past administration, and it means that you're new under a new leadership. I'm just curious to hear from you, how you would handle those situations.
Yeah, well, when it comes to defending city ordinances and policies, I will say I have lots of experience from my prior work in litigation, and the answer to your question somewhat depends on what the case is. But generally, when we get cases, I think we need to evaluate them early and have a sense of what the litigation risk is for continuing the litigation versus trying to resolve the matter, to see if there's ways to save time and money and to be efficient for the city residents. All of my legal analysis really starts with what does the statute say, what does the relevant statute say, and goes from there. As far as ongoing litigation goes, I think also it can be helpful for me to provide council members and the public with information about the lifespan of litigation, the fact that we may be start with, the Court of Common Pleas, and our chances of success in that court may not be the same as our chances of success in the appellate courts and ultimately in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So for very big issues and big litigation, we have to think about the entire span and come up with a strategy for the litigation with that potential appeal in mind as well.
And with your first bullet point here, with your work at the U.S. Department of Justice, I have to ask, it says defending the White House and a diverse set of federal agencies. So since you've worked there since 2007, I'm not sure if that was the same role that you were in, or if you were doing those duties in 2007 as well. But throughout that span, there's been different presidents.
5, yes.
And so could you talk about how, that may relate to the question that counsel typically has, will you represent counsel, as well as, how does that work for us,
Yeah.
You as a city solicitor, appointed by, or, current mayor, and, approved by this body, I think council always wonders, who are you working for? And I know we've talked about this.
Yes.
And, your answer was that, the answer that all solicitors usually give, which is they, work for the city of Pittsburgh. Their client is the city of Pittsburgh. So just seeing that first bullet point, I'm thinking, wow, well, you've already been through where you've had to represent the client, regardless of who the client is. And so could you just walk us through how that experience will really benefit us here, since you've had multiple different, presidents throughout the time you worked at the Department of Justice?
Yes. Yes. The city solicitor's client is the city of Pittsburgh. In my last role, and it was the same for those 18 years, I was in the same group, the federal programs branch, which does work on these high-profile cases no matter who the president is and no matter who the Congress was that passed the statute that is being challenged in a given case.
Do you see similarities?
Absolutely. As the litigator who's, in that job, my client was the United States, but I defended a number of policies that if I had been the policy maker, I would not necessarily have made that policy, but that wasn't my role. Mm-hmm. My role was to defend it, and I have lots of experience defending, policies from different points of view, depending on the administration that enacted the policy. And I do think that is relevant experience, as you note. Being a government lawyer is a unique thing, and this has been what my career has been, is to be a government lawyer and to think about the public's interest. And I know sometimes people come into roles like this not having had similar prior experience necessarily, and they may bring other things to the position. But what I can bring is certainly an understanding of what that means to represent the city of Pittsburgh, and to look at the legal issues from the perspective of a lawyer and as a litigator, and to advise on the litigation risk for a given policy, and to help provide options within the bounds of the law if counsel is looking to address a certain topic, to try to work with counsel to figure out the best strategy for addressing that topic and avoiding a serious litigation risk.
Okay, thanks. The other question I had was just quickly looking through here and looking for words like managed or supervised. Nothing's like coming out at me, but if you could help us understand, what past experience that you have with these other, with your prior work, it suits you well to manage and supervise this department.
Yeah, I often served as the lead trial attorney on big cases. So I would be leading a team of lawyers at the Department of Justice, and also often lawyers at a federal agency, as well as other staff members, paralegals, and others, working on the litigation and the strategy. So that leadership experience does directly translate to the type of work that I would be doing at the city as the city solicitor.
Yeah, I could see that. I just wanted to, just get a background of like what that looks like, and I imagine that happened in the role throughout I believe it's 18 years at the Department of Justice. That there was a lot of collaboration and a lot of leadership. So thanks for clarifying that. Any further questions?
Thank you, Councilman Mosley.
Thank you. I want to also thank you for your willingness to serve, as well as for a very lively discussion that we had, I guess, about a week or two ago now. My first question is, somewhat dovetails off some of the questions that were, asked previously. If you could, speak to, how your, specific, experience, working for federal judges, as well as the Department of Justice, what kind of unique set of experiences does that bring to the table that, makes you uniquely suited for this role that you're embarking on?
Among the skills that I developed in those prior roles, I think one of the skills that I most developed was statutory interpretation and statutory construction. That was at the heart of my prior job and also at the heart of my work as a federal law clerk. And that is directly transferable to this work, because oftentimes the issues facing a municipality depend on interpreting state statutes and understanding the scope of the city's authority within the framework that the state has set up for its localities. So I think statutory construction and interpretation is the main thing that comes to mind, or the first thing that comes to mind from those prior experiences. I also think, for me, looking at an issue from a legal lens and not from a political lens, I happen to have worked for one judge who had been appointed by a Republican president but was very liberal, and another judge who had been appointed by a Democratic president and was very conservative. And as noted before, I served under 5 different presidential administrations. So I understand political considerations, but I am laser focused on the law.
Thank you. My next question, again, dovetails off my colleague, Councilman Wilson's, question. If you could just, elaborate a little bit more about what does it look like, to lead a team of lawyers, for us, folks who don't have Juris Doctorates. What is that like, just to, for the public to get a sense of, what is it like to, to lead a team of lawyers around a particular case, and then talk about how that, transferred directly to, instead of being, lead lawyer on a specific case now, leading a department of attorneys and support staff, and how
Yeah.
those connect.
That work looks like providing guidance, providing expertise, and sort of the wisdom that comes from litigating over time. But it also looks collaborative. It is engaging with other lawyers so that they produce their best work product, and so that the collective effort produces the best work product. Also, I will say that my work at the Federal Programs Branch, I was very lucky to have very excellent managers who served as role models and mentors for me. And I think some of the management approaches that they had, I'm looking to bring to the law department here.
And then you used the term, government lawyer. Can you talk a little bit about, what a unique experience that a government lawyer brings to the table, as opposed to a criminal defense attorney or someone who's primarily a law professor, but like specifically being, a government lawyer, what does that mean, in your context, and what unique, experience, do you see, as a government lawyer stepping into this role in particular?
A lot of my work as a government lawyer was primarily defensive, although I did have some affirmative cases where I represented the United States as the plaintiff or the potential plaintiff in an action. The real difference between working in the Civil Division, Federal Programs Branch, and working as a prosecutor is that the body of law of the work that I have done is much more applicable to the law department, where we handle the civil work for the city. In Allegheny County, we have a DA who handles our criminal work.
Right.
And so the criminal prosecutorial experience, while it could be very relevant generally to being a lawyer, it's more aligned with the work that the DA's office does than what the law department does.
Thank you. And I think my final question, is, what was it about, this particular role? I mean, it seems like you've been very comfortable, sometimes working by remote, but, really, planting your flag in the nation's capital, working within the confines of the federal, judiciary. What was it about this particular role that called you to kind of step away, from that arena, into municipal law, and here in the hollow halls of the city county building?
I worked on some really big cases in my last job, and I did really like it, but cases that impacted nationwide policies or programs, or cases worth literally $1 billion. But the work that we are doing here, it impacts our neighbors' everyday lives. It is more important to this community. I feel like I can make a real difference in this job for this community, and that is really exciting and important to me.
Thank you. I believe that exhausts my questions for now. I defer back to the chair.
Thank you, Councilman Warwick.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your willingness to come work with us at the city. I guess sort of along the same vein as the other questions, there's always this balance between what's legal and what's right? And here at the city of Pittsburgh, we're quite small, right? And we do have, there's some limits on what we can and can't do, under state law, et cetera. But, so around this sort of idea of what's the litigation risk? I mean, I recognize that when we talk about, because we settle a lot, right? So let's say somebody tripped over a thing and there's like a bazillion 311s and we should have known about it, and it's just going to be cheaper for us to just settle, and you know what I mean, than to litigate the thing. And I get that, right? Like, I understand the law department makes those recommendations based on, what the most effective use of time and taxpayer dollars. But a lot of the time, though, the work that we do at this council, assuming we can get things passed, right, is, around environmental justice, around land use and zoning, around housing affordability, tenant protections, and now, civil and constitutional rights. And so much of the time, as representatives, of the public, we, as sort of a very small, just the city of Pittsburgh, with our often overburdened law department, are going up against large, corporate players, government players, like whatever, who have huge legal teams, right? And who are always going to threaten to sue. Like, that'll be the very first thing they do, is they're like, we're going to sue you. Right. And so how, for you, as, and while we recognize that we write the policy, how do you, as leading up the law department, kind of work with us to ensure that, there's also the purpose, right? It's not just like, well, are we going to get sued and what's the risk? Because, I feel like a lot of the time, yeah, we absolutely are going to get sued, right? Like, people are going to fight us tooth and nail to keep us from protecting the residents of Pittsburgh, and oftentimes the most vulnerable residents of Pittsburgh, right? Who don't have big legal teams. All they've got is us, right? They've got us here fighting for them. So how do you see kind of the law department's role in that?
I would say two things. One, again, the law department's primary role is to provide legal advice. I want, as we do that, as we provide that advice, I want to make sure that we are providing background information on the law, on the framework, and the context in which you all are making your policies, and identifying the lane in which the city can be, creating policy. And then within that lane, it's up to the city council to determine what the policies are. Mm-hmm. As far as litigation risk goes, generally, I am a litigator. I'm not afraid to litigate. And I will say that it won't be the first time that I will face many lawyers on the other side. Last year, I remember I went to an oral argument, and it was just me on our side representing this particular federal agency, and there were a couple of people from the agency who came just to keep me company, and the other side had literally 12 lawyers, and they came in with boxes, and it was just for an oral argument on a motion to dismiss. Mm-hmm. And I'm not intimidated by being outnumbered. And I'm not intimidated by litigation. With that experience in mind, I will look to provide as good advice as I can on what the litigation risks are. And sometimes we will choose to take a path that will still have us in litigation. We do have to think about what those resources entail, but generally speaking, the fact that we might be sued in and of itself is not a reason to not enact a given policy, but we have to think about the best way to position the policy so that when we are sued, we can defend it and it will be upheld by the courts.
So that actually leads me to another question. I'm sort of curious about this. So, there can be times where the administration and council are at odds on any given policy, right? Maybe something passes, whatever. When that happens, and this is more just for me to understand, and I think that's sort of to what Councilman Wilson was asking, like who does the law department represent, right? So let's say there's a given, I don't know, something that's probably going to land us in court, right? I don't know, maybe like rental registry. That's just an example, right? How does it work for the law? Like, how does it work from your perspective of like whether or not we pursue this litigation? Like whether or not, let's say we get sued for some, I mean, I don't know the answer to this, so I'm asking you, like, as the solicitor, do you feel like if council passed it, then the law department is going to go in and fight for it regardless, or?
Yeah, so I mean, the client is the city, and we assess the litigation from that lens. I can draw mostly on my prior experience because I am, there's many ways in which something like what you're describing could arise. But, there were times when we had a policy that was being challenged and the judge was not understanding, our arguments. I'm thinking about a policy guidance document that the state of Texas tried to enjoin. And I looked at the policy guidance document and it didn't do what the state of Texas said it did. And so we went to court, we told the judge that, and he didn't agree with us. So we worked with the agency, and they ended up revising the policy guidance document to address the judge's concerns and to moot the case, which means to make it so that the claims are no longer valid. And so, that was an option that we considered in that time. It didn't mean that we weren't defending the policy guidance document, but we did think about a broader legal strategy and advised on that as well. As for your question about a conflict between the mayor's office and council, again, it's hard for me to envision exactly what you're referring to. But I do think the law department's role is to provide legal advice, and it's the policy maker's role to make the policies.
I mean, just as far as examples, I can think of the case of the, after the Tree of Life shooting, right? We passed, whatever ordinance banning assault weapons, which, obviously we couldn't do. But from my perspective, right, even though I was not on council at the time, right, that was absolutely worth passing, right? That was absolutely worth council, like, making that statement essentially as a body, right, about what's good for Pittsburgh and what's good, what's good for our residents. Another example would be like these parcel reviews, right? So where there may be a difference of opinion about so is it your role as the solicitor, do you have the final say about whether or not to continue pursuing, whether it's ongoing litigation or new litigation, or to say, oh, well, maybe it passed, but we're not gonna, I don't even know how that works, right? Like, so somebody's like, no, you can't do this. Like, what power does the city have, or does the solicitor have to say, okay, well, never mind, we aren't gonna do this?
I mean, in those situations, we generally would confer with, council and with the mayor's office. And yeah, I mean, in some of those situations, I think the city solicitor is the one who's making the decision on behalf of the client, which is the city of Pittsburgh. But it's a little bit hard to talk in the abstract.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it because it's a tough position to be in, right? Because, there's obviously the taxpayer issue, right? You don't want to be just blowing lots of money on a case that you're not going to win, right? Or have and then have the residents owe, or the city, or taxpayers owe a lot of money following a bad outcome. But at the same time, as representatives of the public, we need to be creative and innovative and kind of brave, and like the fights that we're willing to pick oftentimes against Goliaths, on behalf of our residents. So
I guess when you're going into a fight, if there's a best way to win that fight, that's where I'm going to be advising.
Yeah.
I'm not going to necessarily say have the fight, don't have the fight. I mean, that might be part of my advice, but it is positioning the policy so that it will best accomplish what you want it to accomplish.
Yeah.
And will withstand legal challenges, or if there's some risk, that we have at least a decent chance of it withstanding the legal challenges.
Great. Okay. Well, that's great. That's nice to know, just because, we do write legislation and don't always send it to, but try, if it's complicated, certainly send it to, if it's something complicated, sending it to the law department. But it's comforting to know that is the, that the looking at it is going to be like, okay, how can we make this work? Like, how can we make this the most solid piece of legislation so that when it inevitably does face a challenge, which feels like everything complex that we do does, right? That it's as strong a piece of legislation as possible to go through that future litigation.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have appreciated my colleagues' questions and your answers, and I'm not sure if there's really much more to cover, but maybe just recap again. I think we talked about it when we were on a Teams call with each other. You may have already addressed it even in some of your answers here, but that the specificity of municipal law versus other levels, not just government service. So it is very particular, especially around, other levels of government don't have land use, for example, right? And I know that we've staffed up a little bit internally on capacity in that department, but maybe you want to speak a little bit to that. We're often sued over these kinds of issues, so it might be something worthwhile touching on.
Sure. Well, generally speaking, I will say that a lot of state and local statutes and ordinances are modeled after federal law. So there is a lot of similarities in the legal frameworks. And I actually did have a case in my last job involving a zoning question, where a city, it was really a town, tried to have particular zoning that only applied to this one piece of federal property, which was a post office, and changed the zoning just for that property. And that
Spot zoning.
That did.
Right. I don't know if that's the legal technical term, but spot like zoning for one parcel is generally we don't do that.
So, I mean, in that context, I have some background. I am not an expert in land use, but we do have a very good attorney, at least two attorneys in the law department currently who have worked on those types of issues. And although they are different topics, it's really the same analysis, the same approach to the analysis, right? It's what does the statute say, or what does the zoning law say? And then do we have any court cases that give more information on how we're supposed to interpret those words? And that's pretty much it. And that way of analyzing legal issues cuts across all the topics that we face at the municipal level.
Great. I appreciate that. I think it's really important as we face more land use policy than maybe we've ever had before, especially when the city kind of was facing different kinds of policy challenges, like when we were in austerity or when we were facing population decline. These are kind of like the mirror version policy challenges we're facing when we're looking at kind of hyperinvestment and neighborhoods diverging in terms of their real estate markets from disinvested to versus hyperinvested, instead of just kind of there being stasis.
Right.
And so we're trying to really change policy, and it brings up legal questions.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I will say that in my work as an attorney, I have often encountered new to me legal schemes. You know, that actually was what I loved most about my last job. It was constantly new and changing and challenging. So prior to 2 years ago, I had never worked with the Bureau of Prisons, and then I got one case with the Bureau of Prisons, and I became an expert in, you know, this area of the law and the Eighth Amendment and some other related statutes and policies having to do with prison operations. And so I do think that skill set of being able to learn new areas of the law is something that I'm looking forward to bringing to this role.
Good. I won't call you out on them now, but I have this recurring question from constituents, and I've had to say, it's like other cities do this when we're faced with the problems of gentrification and rapidly changing neighborhoods. And I've had to say, like, every attorney has told us, we're not allowed to do this, right? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I'll follow up and see if you can, figure out a different take. But maybe there's a way that we could do something that's similar enough with the same outcomes, but it threads the needle of kind of the restrictions or preemptions that our state has put on the city of Pittsburgh. So there's a handful of those, and it's always great to have a fresh eye on them. So I'll follow up with those questions because, our residents are asking us to make policy to address the challenges that they're seeing. So it's really, we keep trying, even if we haven't figured it out yet. We keep trying to find solutions to that problem, and so it's good to have to keep asking the question. Maybe there's just an answer we haven't thought of yet. Other than that, I think, again, I've had my own discussions with you. We've had lots of good questions here at the table. I'll just, again, not call you out, but I'll flag for you that we're also kind of looking at the ways that cities currently are protecting the rights of their citizens. Just put it in a big rubric there. And so, my staff's hard at work on it. We've got probably like 8 different avenues that we're looking at. So I look forward to having those conversations as well.
Great.
Appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. For my part, I think all the questions that you and I had spoke about when we met have been brought up today. I will simply sort of reiterate something that came up in our conversation, which is that there be someone within the solicitor's office that's sort of the point person for counsel. I know historically, for me at least, I'm not sure for all members, and we talked about this, it was historically Jesse. And I know you're evaluating and structuring what your office is going to look like. But I think it's very helpful to the councilwoman's sort of opening remarks that there is a direct sort of point of contact, of which on all major issues you've already been clear that you want to be copied, but that council has a direct line into the solicitor's office. Obviously, we can reach out to you, but you have a lot on your plate. So there being at least one point of contact in the solicitor's office for council becomes important. So
That's very reasonable, and it is and should continue to be Jesse.
okay, thank you.
And he also oversees our municipal law group and has a good context to figure out who else to bring in on a given issue.
Okay. If nothing else from the rest of members, then having exhausted the business of this pre-agenda interview, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.